Hey everyone, my marketing research fans and students. Okay, so you've made it through the descriptive analysis on the Titanic database. We got a little bit of an understanding of the types of statistics too, that descriptive statistics that are meaningful in the marketing discipline. But I do like to use the Titanic database for you to work on because I think it's pretty intuitive and it's a nice little small clean database. So what we're going to do now is we're going to learn a little bit about correlation analysis. And as you know, this is a refresher because you've all had statistics, so this should be just a refresher for you and how we can use this for our surveys. So just to check in again, you got your survey in the field. What responses do you have? If you're having trouble getting responses, you need to be creative in how you can get more. If you need some additional ideas, please feel reach out to me. But remind people, repost, tell them it's for your class project, and that'll be confidential and not to worry about it, but to help you out because you need a good data set in order to analyze. So last time we went over assignment number 5. I'm not going to go over that again. I'll just talk a little bit about what's next. You've loaded your data into Excel. You've created a workbook. You ran descriptive statistics, and this time we're going to run correlation. And then I want you to be able to analyze the correlation data from the set. And then once you've done that, create finish up that correlation worksheet. And then how are you going to create a correlation table with your own marketing research survey? All right, so we went over the analysis, the assignment number 5 last time. So where we are at right now is part 2, and I want you to download the correlation analysis worksheet as we walk through this. And just a reminder to you, don't upload anything on this assignment until you have all of it completed, meaning you are going to upload one time in Canvas the Excel workbook that you're working on with all of the data that I can review and the 3 completed worksheets. If you upload them in increments, the next time you upload, you'll lose what you have in there. So all at one time. All right, again, if you're having trouble following along using Excel, please refer to my how-to videos that I have loaded into the assignment under resources. Okay, so pull out your correlation analysis worksheet. It will look very similar to the descriptive analysis when we come to the front here. Just a little bit of a reminder here on how to your code book, what you're going to be working with. You've already done you already have your workbook ready to roll. So this is going to walk you step by step how to run your analysis, and I want you to answer the questions that are there. All right, before we get into the Titanic database, let's talk a little bit about correlation. Now, correlation is really helpful in marketing research because it helps you understand the relationships between 2 variables. So like age and willingness to purchase, or maybe store, type of store, convenience store, retail store, and pricing, perception. But what correlation really looks at is gives us an idea of the relationship between 2 different variables. So I want you to think about what correlations you might want to look for in your study. So when we look at correlations really is the strength of a relationship between 2 variables. And they can go in 2 different directions, a positive and a negative direction. So a positive correlation is when both variables move in the same direction. So as one variable increases, so does the other. So think of it like this. Say, for example, we're looking at smoking and alcohol use. So as alcohol increases, so does smoking. So there is a positive correlation between smoking and alcohol. All right, so when you have two variables that have a negative correlation, it's an inverse, meaning that as one increases, the other decreases and vice versa. So let's look at what this might mean. So students who spend a higher amount of time playing video games each week has the lowest GPAs. As the hours of spent playing they sorry, as the hours spent playing the video games decreased, the GPA increased. So you get that? So it's an inverse relationship, meaning that the fewer hours you're spending on watching video games, the higher the GPA. What about the weight of a car in miles per gallon? Cars are heavier, tend to get less gas mileage per gallon. And then we would have a school achievement, and in days absent from school, people who miss more schools have a tendency to have higher GPAs. So let's think about vaccines and illnesses. The more that people are vaccinated for a specific illness, the less the illness occurs. So an inverse relationship. Okay, then we also look, not only do we look at the direction, positive or negative, we look at the correlation strength. So what we want to do is we want to, where we start off is if there's no relationship at all, it's a 0. If you have a negative relationship, it is going to be between a -1 and a 0. If you have a positive relationship or correlation, it's going to be between 0 and 1. So our goal is to find those relationships, positive or negative, strong relationships. The closer you get to 1, negative or positive, the stronger the relationship. All right, so how are you going to test correlation? So you're going to go into your data analyzer in Excel, select data analysis, and then I want you to select correlation, then hit OK. Then what I want you to do is select all of your data right here. You're going to get every single line of data in there. Select OK, and then you are going to name this worksheet, input the name correlation. All right, so once you've done that, you should get in a new workbook called correlation. Your correlation table for the Titanic database should have opened. All right, so let's take a look at what your results should look like. So the testing the correlation strength, the first thing we want to do is remember that the closer the correlation coefficient is to 1, positive or negative, the stronger it is. So you need to not only denote whether it's a strong relationship or not, it is whether it's positive or negative. So we have to keep into context the thought that, okay, we're looking at passenger data from the Titanic. So you want to know, okay, if I'm a person going on the Titanic, I might want to know the correlation between certain things of interest to us. So remember, state is whether they lived or died. Passenger class is, are you first, second, or third class, gender, male, female, age, and age range. I don't really use age range here because it's hard to do in a correlation analysis just because. So we're going to look at age. But see what our question is, our dependent variable is whether or not somebody lives or died. So when you're looking at a correlation table, what it always does is it takes your dependent variable or your outcome variable, and it should have a correlation of 1 because it's 100%, right? And then it will spread across both ways. Passenger class here should be 1. Anytime you can't correlate something with itself because it's always going to be 1. So we want to look at the other thing. So let's look at passenger class has a correlation. Passenger class and whether they lived or died has a correlation of 0.32. So you have to ask yourself, remember 1 is the strongest, so you're kind of thinking like maybe there's a 32% strength that, the passenger class, I'm going to, my chances are, or there's a relationship. There's a relationship there between the passenger class or state. So we'd have to look more deeply into those people, etc., what they're doing, but there's something there and it's relatively weak. We're not even at 5%. So then gender, now gender's a little bit over, you know, 0.5. So it's getting stronger there. So you might be thinking, well, maybe my gender is a little bit more strong than what class I'm in when it happens on the Titanic, which kind of makes sense because they always say women and children off first, right? So that would say that let's look at gender and passenger class. Not really a big correlation there, right? You're like really, really low here at 0.1. We're not, you know, that's probably just insignificant. So let's look at age here. Now, age is age and whether you lived or died, relatively small. Now, that's interesting because they say women and children off first, but it looks like in this case there isn't a strong relationship. But there's a negative relationship between age and passenger class. Is that meaningful to us? Not really, because we're looking at people who live and die, right? So I want you to look at this and try to analyze and decide for yourself, because remember, we are the researcher. We need to decide whether or not this data is meaningful to us. So I want you to decide whether or not the correlation strength, it makes sense to you. All right, now the next thing we look at is the significance between we do a t-test, paired two sample means. So the first thing you're going to do to run this analysis is select data analysis, select the t-test paired two means. Okay, you're going to set a range for your variables. And then you're going to click OK. Check your labels. The label box, keep the alpha at 0.05 because generally in marketing we use a significance of 0.05. So we're going to do this for the Titanic, even though it has nothing to do with marketing. Enter 0 for hypothesized mean difference, and then enter t-test plus variable name. So that's what your worksheet's going to be called. Again, I'm going through this really fast. There is a step-by-step how to do this tutorial in the assignment. All right, so let's take a look at what has populated from our t-test. So what are we looking for? We're looking for the Pearson correlation number, and we are looking at the two-tailed t-test. So what you want to do is you want to determine if our correlations are significantly different from 0. So a correlation is significant at the 0.05 level. So how we do this is we look at the p-value, and if it is less than your significance level, the difference between the means is statistically significant. So here we've got state, whether people live and die, and passenger class. So what this is telling us is that there is a 0.32 correlation between state, whether you live and die, and passenger class. So what is this telling us? Let's look at the p-value here. If the p-value, we already looked at the correlation last time, remember the 32%, but the p-value here, this is higher than 0.05. So it's telling us that it really isn't statistically significant, even though the correlation here has told us, yeah, there may be something there to look at. It's weak, but there is a correlation. All right, so let's look at state and gender. So in this case, remember we had about a 53. So it was positive. It's about halfway to 1. So there was something there we might want to look at. It's not a strong correlation, but it was something to look at. But here, if you look at this, we have a 0.01 confidence, or a 0.01 significance level, meaning, yeah, you know what, that is a statistically significant statistic. So it's meaningful to us because it is less than 0.05. So this information should help you answer the questions on your worksheet. I want you to walk through, and remember, the worksheets have the step-by-step instructions that I just went through. So this is going to be a piece of cake for you. Now, what I want you to think about, once you get done with these analyses, start to think about your own marketing research survey. And there's one really important thing that you need to understand about working in Excel. If you're using Excel Analyzer, which I think most of you will do, if you have familiarity in SPSS, R, or Python, feel free to use that. There's an issue in Excel with null values. So a null value, your correlation table will not run if you have blanks in your data set. So you'll have to go through and on this correlation, you'll have to delete your data set for anything with a null value because it just won't run. And I'm sorry for that. It's a bug in Excel. You can't put zeros in because that's going to be a nominal figure, which will really mess up your overall results. So remember that. Delete any rows that have a null or blank cell. And I would do this in a separate file because you want to keep your raw data clean. Use the same instructions to run your data set using the Titanic assessment. So you're going to use the same process for what you're going to do for correlation, descriptives, and regression. All right, you need to turn in just one correlation table for your research project. So this is after you finish your Titanic analysis on all three. So were you comfortably able to run a correlation table in Excel on the Titanic? And are you ready to analyze the results for your marketing research project? Those are the things I want you to think about. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me in Canvas. If you are interested in more marketing topics, subscribe to my YouTube channel. So hopefully this correlation makes sense to you in context of the Titanic database, and I want you to start thinking about running the analysis on your own data set. So thank you very much and have an amazing day. Take care.